prime real estate falls into the Pacific. Now what? Chapter 39. I've always said that I like challenges, and when I decided to take over the beleaguered Ocean Trails golf course in Palos Verdes near Los Angeles, that's exactly what I got. I began referring to it as Ocean Trials before renaming it Trump National Golf Club, and for good reason. In an article in Fairways and Greens, they describe the 18th hole, which, by the way, is the one that slid into the ocean, as ground zero plus 61 million. Can you believe I spent 61 million on one hole? I believe it. Well, believe it. When I want something done, I want it done right. This hole is the most expensive in golf history. I would hope so because I can't imagine doing this too many times. The situation, through my eyes, you would see that it's warranted every penny spent. The course fronts the Pacific Ocean 2 miles and easily rivals the fabled Pebble Beach in both beauty and finesse. I could see that before it became a reality, and so I didn't care about the expense involved. Golf courses are works of art and deserve that kind of attention. As with many of my projects, I'd been paying attention to this course for years. I knew it had the potential to be one of the top golf courses in the world. However, when it opened as Ocean Trails in 1999, there was a catastrophe when the 18th hole slid toward the ocean. It also damaging three adjacent holes. The water lines, which were beneath the fairway, had given away. This was a very serious mess. A landslide is a nightmare for a cliff-hanging property, especially when it involves 17 acres of earth. Suddenly, an 18 hole course was reduced to 15 holes. It was a disaster for the owners, and they entered bankruptcy court in 2002. That's when I made my move and offered them 27 million for the land, the clubhouse, and the course. Compare that to 61 million for one hole. It was a good deal. I had to make a choice. Should I fix it and be done with it because it was already a nice enough course, or should I go all out and make it over into one of the most celebrated courses in the world? I think you can guess which choice I made. It wasn't the easy choice, but it was the best one. I estimate that to redo the entire course, including reconstruction of the fallen hole, would cost me about 265 million. So how do I explain 61 million for one hole? Well, this was what was involved: a series of walls made from local Palos Verdes rock quarried at $600 a ton, and that structural layer built underneath the hole that goes down to the cliff down the cliff to the beach, which means every 10 feet is a steel platform which provides a very strong structure. This was intricate and difficult work. I will admit I had some second thoughts about spending that much on one hole. That's a huge investment. No matter how much money you have and the difficulties were outstanding, what I did was something that I would suggest to you. Look at the solution, not the problem. I focused on the spectacular outcome I wanted, and it got done. I had moments of doubt when I wondered how feasible my think big attitude was going to be in this situation and where it might lead me. Well, I like cliffhangers because it definitely had that feeling about it. On the positive side of things, I brought in Pete Dye, one of the legends in golf course design, to Ocean Trails and remake it into a worthy rival to Pebble Beach. If anyone in the industry could do that, Pete Dye could. I wanted to make this course the best and was completely redesigning it. It's brand new and includes waterfalls and a great driving range. In order to build the driving range, I had to wipe out about 30 housing lots to have the appropriate space. That means about 300 million because each lot would bring about 10 million. So all these things had to be considered. Also, everything was new from the traps and sand to the trees and fairways. I wanted crushed granite for the bunkers. The costs were enormous, and I was hoping the rewards would be too. I was enjoying myself, but would this work and expense pay off? Would this be just a great experiment? Great expectations that don't manage to deliver. I have to stop here to say that there are no guarantees in anything. People see my success and really think that it's a breeze to get it all done. It's not. And I spend plenty of time assessing and reassessing, analyzing and scrutinizing. People just don't see me doing that. Another important thing to consider is experience. I've been a developer for a long time, so a lot of decisions are second nature to me and not a terrific demand on my brain power to figure out. I can move quickly once I've done the groundwork in my mind. However, the plans have to be in place. Be sure you have a foundation of expertise and experience in whatever you do, and then you can act decisively and creatively. There were a lot of details to consider, along with reconstruction of the golf course itself, the 40,000 square foot clubhouse, for one thing, which has a restaurant and that has won the Golden Scepter Award, Best New Restaurant, and the Golden Bacchus Award for its wine list. The course itself has become the number one golf course in California, and the Michael Douglas and Friends Pro Celebrity takes place there every April. Trump National Golf Club, Los Angeles, has become a spectacular success on all levels. You might even call it a landslide. But my never give up moment came when, after knowing the potential of the property for years, I saw that landslide disaster and wanted to do something spectacular about it. Thinking big. What a great idea. Think internationally. Chapter 40. You've heard me emphasize the importance of keeping informed about global events, which includes political as well as financial news. I'd like to recommend to you a book that was published in 2007 that reinforces the importance of thinking internationally. It's called Microtrends: The Small Forces Behind Tomorrow's Big Changes. It's written by Mark J. Penn, who is a highly respected analyst who has been an advisor to Fortune 500 corporations, and to many foreign heads of state. He has an insight into both national and international trends and events that shape our future. Bill Gates said, Penn has a keen mind and a fascinating sense of what makes America and the world tick, and you see it on every page. Penn has a chapter on international home buyers. Being in real estate, I took a special interest in what he had to say. Penn astutely points out that foreign ownership of residential real estate is the United States' hot trend. Globalization has torn down the barriers that have formerly separated the national and from the international markets. And one result is that affluent foreigners have been drawn to real estate in the United States. I recognized this years ago, which he points out in New York. Donald Trump was a major factor in opening up the city to foreigners. Most buildings in New York City had been co ops, and since co ops can reject anyone for just about any reason, they looked very carefully at absentee foreign purchasers. But Trump opened condos and sales of condos largely unregulated because they offer single apartments, not share in a corporation. Most new buildings are condo foreign buyers, now that most new buildings are condos, foreign buyers are streaming in. The important thing to consider is that more and more there is an interdependence of world economies. No one can afford to be isolationist anymore. For many years, many Americans have second homes in foreign countries, and now the trend, as Penn points out, has hit our shores. This is nothing new, but it's relatively new to us. I think it's a harbinger of things to come. When I first went with condos years ago, I knew it was a timely thing to do. My point is I had been keeping up with global events for years, and it wasn't that hard for me to see this trend coming. I'm not clairvoyant, but I take the same time to be well informed. You can and should do the same thing. Spend some time on international events, read books, and keep ahead of what's happening. Catching up can waste a lot of time. Having some prescience can save you a lot of time. Keep your focus global, and you may well find yourself ahead of the game. Chapter 41. Where others fail, there's your opportunity. On occasion, I am asked what my favorite deals have been. I have a lot to choose from, but there is something about the acquisition of 40 Wall Street that will always stand apart. Not only because of the locations, which is in the financial district of Manhattan, but because of an almost magical sense of timing, which made it seem like destiny. That does not mean it was an easy, simple feat to acquire, because it wasn't. But I like to use this as an example to tell people about how difficulties and challenges can add another dimension to your life, and a positive dimension at that. In addition to being the tallest building in lower Manhattan, 40 Wall Street is a 1.3 million square foot landmark. I got it for just 1 million. Even people who know very little about real estate can be duly impressed with that price. I'll tell you some background about how it came about, because it's a great story actually. It will also illustrate the myth of the so called overnight success. I had been watching this building for decades, and I knew a lot about it before making my move. In the 1960s and 1970s, 40 Wall Street was a fully occupied building, and it was indeed a hot property. However, in the early 1980s, it was bought by Ferdinand Marcos, the former dictator of the Philippines. Unfortunately, a revolutionary in the Philippines required his full attention, and the skyscraper at 40 Wall Street fell into decline. Dealings became chaotic, and soon the whole thing was a mess. Marcus was out. Then the Reskins, a great deal, a great, then the Resnicks, a great real estate family, descended on 40 Wall Street. But after a long period of negotiation, it became clear that the Resnicks and their partner Citibank weren't going to make it, and 40 Wall Street would once again go back on the block. They were unfortunate to be dealing with one of the dumbest bankers I had ever known, Patricia Goldstein. But for me, this was good news. I wanted very much at this time to make my move, but this was the early 1990s and I was in no position to do so. The market was terrible, and in addition, my own financial woes were exactly that, woeful. I remember thinking that I'd love to acquire this building, but I thought it was one of those dreams that would never come true. This is a good lesson for those of you who have thought that way too. Shortly after I had just about given up on my dreams, something happened. It was announced that the Kinsin Company, a group of people from Hong Kong, was buying 40 Wall Street. They made a great deal. After their purchase was complete, I called them and I said I'd like to meet them about a possible partnership. As it turns out, they weren't interested in a partnership, but in making 40 Wall Street the downtown equivalent of Trump Tower with an atrium. What they do with the steel columns that held up the 72-story building never seemed to enter their minds. I was truly astounded, but it also gave me some hope. They obviously didn't know what they were doing. How long could they continue to hold on to a building that dwarfed them in every conceivable way? The Kinsen Group proved to be relatively clueless about renovating, running, and leasing out a New York City skyscraper. To begin with, they weren't in the real estate business. They were in the apparel business. Kinsen began pouring tens of millions of dollars into the building and getting absolutely nowhere. They had problems with tenants, contractors, suppliers, architects, and even the owners of the land under the building, the Hindenburg family. Eventually, they wanted out and they called me. I was thrilled. 3 years of dealing with the situation out of their depth, they had taken a toll on Kingston. It was now 1995 and the market still wasn't so good. Kingston had every reason to want to get out and they wanted to do so quickly and quietly. I was in a great position due to their distress, and the negotiations began with me offering them 1 million in addition to assuming and negotiating their liens. I also made the deal subject to a restructured ground lease with the Hindenburg family. They accepted my terms without question. They obviously just wanted out and fast. Sad as their story is, it's true to New York real estate. If you don't know what you're doing, you simply won't make it. That's another good lesson to remember. Always know what you're getting into. You have to do your own due diligence, especially if it's a field that's new to you. The next thing I did was to call Walter Hindenburg himself in Germany. Then I flew over to meet him. I got along very well with Hindenburg. Oh, it's Hindenburgers. I got on very well with Hindenburgers, whatever. And they realized that after a string of losers who had owned the building, I had the integrity of their spectacular property first and foremost in mind. They were a truly great family and they knew I loved the building, that I would be doing everything possible to restore its inherent grandeur. We worked out a new lease for the land under the building, extending the term to over 200 years, and the agreement was modernized, which served everyone's best interest. However, keep this in mind, getting to this point was a long time coming. It didn't happen overnight. I was tenacious and attentive to this property for many years. Then the question was what to do with the building. I had been advised to turn it into a residential property by almost every person who had educated opinion to give. However, I felt in my gut I wanted to keep it as a great business address because Wall Street is a great business address, so I refused to budge. Time has shown that I made the right decision. It is a thriving and sought after building with many of the top notch businesses in the world operating within its walls. In addition, very soon after acquiring 40 Wall Street, the real estate market turned for the better and the downtown area experienced a renaissance in both commercial and residential properties and developments. This timing could not possibly have been better. I'm not one for miracles, but this comes close. I make approximately 20 million a year in rentals from 40 Wall Street and the building is now worth 500 million. Not bad for a $1 million investment. So aside from owning the most beautiful building in lower Manhattan, I have added attraction of making profit. Have you been to the Trump building at 40 Wall Street? If you have, you know why I'm so proud. There is nothing like Wall Street, and there is nothing as beautiful as this building. Coach Trump says, nothing is easy. Sometimes you just have to be stubborn as well as patient. Recognize opportunity. It always hides behind problems and ugliness and failure, especially the failures of others. Every challenge or obstacle you come up against is simply an opportunity in disguise. Think big, think creatively. You'll see it. And don't forget your gut instinct. It's there for a reason. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Never Give Up by Donald Trump. How I turned my biggest challenges to successes.